number 29 of the Algebra 2 fall semester exam review. All right, so on 29, it asks us to graph the system of inequalities. So now this is going to be a little different in Aware than it is what I'm looking at, because I'm looking at it on paper. Like this is a PDF that I've saved of the review. So when you're actually in Aware, you'll have some choices here for your 2 lines. You can select if they should be solid or dashed. Okay, and actually, you know what? I think I can. Yeah, here, I'm pulling it up virtually here. Okay, so here's what it looks like in Aware. So you have the option to choose if those lines should be solid or dashed, and then to select your solution set. So it says first select line A button. Okay, so I'm going to select line A. Okay, and then I'm going to graph the line and choose the line style. So the dashed or solid. Okay, and then I'll move to B. Okay, so first things first, you probably want to get these equations in where y is isolated, so they're in mx plus b form. So if you rearrange these to get them in mx plus b form, so let me do that on the PDF. Okay, so for this first one, I would move the 3x by subtraction. Okay, and then I would divide out the -2. Now, you need to remember, when you divide by a negative, your inequality flips direction. So it's going to switch to greater than. Okay, and then I'm going to do the x term first. So the -3 over -2 is going to be +3 over 2x. And then -6 divided by -2 will be +3. So there's the first inequality with y isolated. Okay, and then the second one, I would subtract the 4x over and then divide out the 2. Now this time I'm dividing by a positive, so my inequality does not flip. So it's going to stay less than or equal. And then the -4 divided by 2 would be -2x. And the 8 divided by 2 would be +4. So there's my 2 equations in mx plus b form. And the reason I did that, y'all should know how to graph a line. The b is your y-intercept, and the m is your slope to get you a second point. Okay, so if I go to graph these, let me go back to my Aware version here. So 3/2 x plus 3. Okay, so +3 means there's a point on the y-axis at 3, and then it was 3/2 is my slope. So rise 3, run 2. So there's that first line. Now that inequality, remember, it flipped. It became a greater than. It does not have an or equal, so it should be dashed. Okay. Then I need to graph the second line. So I'm going to click on line B here. And it was -2x plus 4. So it's got a y-intercept at 4. And then a -2 slope. So down to right 1. Okay, now that one did have an or equal. So that line should be solid. Okay, so now I'm going to select the solution set. Like, where should the shading be? There's 4 different sections here that it could be shaded. So remember, it's where the overlap happens. So again, looking at this, it should be greater than the blue line and less than the green line. So above the blue, below the green. So above the blue, but below the green would be over here. So I select that as my shading, and that's how I'm going to answer that in Aware. That's what that should look like when you do that. So you have to graph the lines separately and then select the area that should be shaded. You have to make sure you select if they should be solid or dashed correctly as well. You can always look at them in Desmos to check that matches. So that was, let me split screen here. Let's see what happens when we plot them without getting them in mx plus b form. I haven't tried this, so let's see. If I just type it as 3x minus 2y is less than -6. Hey, it's going to graph it for you in Desmos without rearranging it. So how about that? So that was our blue line, and it tells you it should be dashed. So now let's do the second one without rearranging it. It was 4x plus 2y is less than or equal, less than or equal to 8. And that was the green one. Okay, and then you can see how this matches what I did in Aware. The overlapping is the shading that the solution's in. So it's on this left side that the blue and green shading overlap. Okay, and then you could get any 2 points from these lines to help you graph them. So if you don't know that you should change it to slope intercept form using Desmos, you didn't have to. Okay, just pick 2 points on the line and go plot those to get your blue line, and then pick 2 points on the green line and go plot those to get. Obviously, I would not have picked this one that's a decimal. Pick any other 2 points. So find yourself. Let me unclick this one. So there's a point, and then you could try. This one had the slope of 3/2. So it looks like you could come up here and see one at an intersection. Maybe not. Yeah, 2/6. So you can always do that. Okay, so you could use Desmos to help you graph that. Just FYI. Okay, but it ended up, I'm not going to put it here. It's in, I showed you in Aware here, what it ended up looking like. Okay, so you can do that. Okay, 30, the solution to the system. Okay, there were some questions earlier. This is repeat system questions. So this is also in another video I show this, but this is all done in Desmos. You type your 3 equations into Desmos just as they're written. So 5x plus 2y plus z equals -11. And it's not going to graph anything because there's no z. We don't know what z is. It's going to give you this option to add a z slider. And you can add it now, or you can type all of your equations, then add the z slider. It doesn't matter. Okay, now I'm going to add my second equation, which is 2x minus 3y minus z equals 17. And then my third equation is 7x plus y plus 2z equals -4. So what we're looking for is the point where all 3 of these intersect. Okay, so it looks like we're pretty close to that. Oh man, it already gave it to us on the point, which is nice. That is not always the case. So sometimes you'll have to move this z slider around and you'll see these lines moving, and you move them until you see all 3 lines intersecting at one place. Okay, and this happens at 0, -6. That's your x, y, and look at what your z slider is set equal to. It's set equal to 1. So it happens when x is 0, y is -6, and z is 1. So in your answer choices, sometimes they're looking for just the x, just the y, or just the z. You can see this is written as an ordered triple. So this is looking for all 3, and you make sure it's in x, y, z order. Okay, so that was at 0, -6, 1. So that should be answer choice B there. Okay, and this is all done in Desmos. Okay, we didn't have to write anything down for that. Okay, now number 31 is getting into our most recent unit, 5B, with complex numbers. Okay, so on your reference sheet, let's see where it is so I can point it out to you. There, quadratic formula. This is what we have to be able to use. Okay, and remember that it's ax squared plus bx plus c. You might want to add that to your reference sheet if you don't know it. Okay, because remember, this is telling us a is an understood 1 because there's nothing in front of the x squared. B is that positive 4 here. And C is the 5, the constant here. So we've got our ABC. So I'm going to plug in negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So when I simplify this, okay, I simplify the denominator. 2 times 1 is just 2. If you've got a double negative out here, it'll become positive, but here you don't. It just stays negative 4 plus or minus. And then I'm going to simplify what's under the radical. I'm going to take this. That's not what I wanted to do. I want to highlight. Okay, it's not letting me highlight, but I want to take this that's underneath there and type that in all this right here. I'm going to take that and type it in Desmos to simplify what goes under the radical. Okay, so I'm simply going to come over here and type in, first I'm going to get rid of all this. Okay, and then I'm going to do 4 squared minus 4 times A times C. Okay, and it comes out to negative 4. Okay, so negative 4 is what is underneath my radical now. Now, here's where you have to remember, if you have a negative under the radical, it comes out as what? But what do we, what, an I. Remember this, the negative under the radical, the square root of negative 1 is I. See all these I's? That's where I is coming from. It's coming from having a negative under the radical. So our answer choice definitely needs to have an I in it, which all of these do, so I can't eliminate any that way. And our last test, we could eliminate like half the answer choices on some of them because some of the answer choices had I and some didn't. Okay, but on this one, so far I can't eliminate, they all have an I, so I can't eliminate those yet. But I can rewrite this as negative 4 plus or minus, and then the I is going to be out here. Now, the square root of 4, what is the square root of 4? The square root of 4 is 2, so that gets replaced with a 2. Now, I can reduce. Both of these can be divided by 2, right? So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. And 2 divided by 2 is just an understood 1. So you don't have to write it. So this is what it ends up coming out as. Negative 2 plus or minus I. Okay. So that's where we're at. Is the bell about to ring? Oh, there it is. Okay. Be sure to check. I'll post the rest of the videos. I'm going to stop this video here and then I'll make one for the last couple of questions later.